Hello and welcome everyone here. I'm so happy you come here for another healing story. So today we've got Melody telling her story with us, and I'm very excited to learn from you what helped you to transform your life and heal your trauma wounds there as well. So would you like to tell us a little bit about you, how it all started and what kind of symptoms you struggled with the most, or that were really difficult for you?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing was that I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease about 4 or 5 years ago already. But before that, just so I can paint like sort of a picture of how my life looked like, I struggled with anxiety forever since I can remember. I remember being a little kid and telling my mom like, "Oh, I feel like I have an exam and I don't." So this sort of like nervousness the whole time. I was diagnosed with migraines when I was 2 years old. Um, Depression, like always struggling with people pleasing, not really knowing who I was, like always trying to achieve things in order to prove myself or trying to get validation through physical appearance. I was always stuck in jobs that I didn't like. It just felt like everything was really unfulfilling. And I felt like, why is my life like that? And always sort of struggling with random physical symptoms. But I think like the last thing was being diagnosed with Crohn's disease, right? So yeah, my health was really bad. It's like a digestive issues and autoimmune disease. My joints were hurting. I couldn't walk. I had a lot of pain. Yeah, this was sort of the picture. So there was like mental struggles and physical struggles and relationship struggles and everything was a bit everything was a struggle. Yeah.
And they kind of feed all on each other, isn't it? When we're physically not well, because that is a serious illness. It really affects the way the nutrients that your body can absorb or does not absorb, because you have all those inflammations and the pains.
Yeah.
And then your window of tolerance to deal with emotional stuff kind of shrinks to nothing.
Exactly. Like I remember at the time actually, I stopped smiling. And I didn't notice, but I noticed through people around me, because once I started healing, they were suddenly, "Oh, you're laughing." But I didn't realize, because yeah, it's what you're saying. Like the ability for me to cope with life diminished a lot because I was struggling with the physical pain. And as you said, it affected everything else, because it meant that I couldn't go to work anymore. At that moment, I was doing my master's degree and I had to quit because there was no way that I could get into university. I couldn't get out of the house, so I couldn't socialize. So it was just like adding up even more and more and more. Like it was a really dark moment of my life where I felt extremely miserable.
Yeah. Did you also like it? Everything's kind of crumbling apart. that fragile structure that I had is like it all
Completely, yeah. And I was living in Belgium, but I'm from Spain, and my whole family is in Spain. But at that point, I was living in Belgium, and I had nowhere there. And back in Spain, my mom was also struggling with physical illness. So no one could come visit, or I could not go there. So it was even like more a sense of isolation. Like I'm completely alone and I don't know what to do in this foreign country, right?
Yes. Yeah. That add to it being a foreign country, and then even that's because I migrated as well. When you're in a different country, it takes a while to trust that medical system in a foreign country. I don't know why this is, but it's a challenge, isn't it? Because there's the language barrier; they don't understand you properly, and
Completely. That was actually something else, because I did understand some French at the time, but not completely. So like my partner at the time had to be the one translating, so I never felt like fully in control. Like there was always someone talking for me. And yes, definitely, like I didn't trust the system as I would trust in Spain. And I'd always felt like there was something, they are not fully hearing me. Like this doesn't feel fully right for me. Like there was something like that I didn't like of all of it.
yeah, wow. I'm really curious how this then how healing your trauma wounds and the emotional component did that have an impact on your physical health as well?
It was the reason why I healed. It's an interesting story because, as I was saying, like Crohn's disease was just like, I don't know how you say it in English, like the top of the iceberg. It was just like the last drop of things, right? Like, as I was saying, I started with anxiety and my life was really unfulfilling and I was always stuck like in abusive relationships, unfortunately, and stuff like that. And then when I was diagnosed, all these physical symptoms added, but it did trigger something in me, not immediately. So I did struggle for a few months. I sort of surrendered to that label. So I thought I'm going to be sick forever. I'm chronically ill.
Yes.
They told me you have to accept that you're going to be sick forever and you're going to be on meds forever. Right. And at that point, I accepted that reality. So it was my truth. But then something clicked and I couldn't tell you what it was exactly. I don't even remember how it arrived. But I was like, I don't think that's true for me. It was something in my body that told me this is not true. And suddenly certain information started to come through me in different ways, right? Social media, YouTube, books, like things presented to me. And I started reading. And I started understanding the link between trauma and physical symptoms. And I started understanding how inflammation was causing all of that, because my doctors didn't really tell me what it was, right? They were saying like Crohn's disease has no root. It happens. It could be genetic. It could be a bacteria. It could be this. It could be that. But I never fully understood. And at that point, I had such a rational brain and I wanted to understand why.
Yeah.
So I had to find the answers by myself. So I started seeing how that inflammation, how all of this was linked to nervous system dysregulation.
Yes.
And unprocessed trauma. So through the healing of all these wounds, something that happened naturally was the healing of the disease. So that's how it clicked for me. But I don't have an answer exactly or how the things came. It's just like, I guess it had to happen that way.
So did it?
I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah. Did your symptoms completely resolve? Like there's no inflammation? That's beautiful.
No. At that point, when I started educating myself in all of these things and, like getting certifications, doing courses, I started to realize that I didn't align anymore with Western medicine and the approach that they were giving me. The meds were giving me a lot of, how do you say it? Like other symptoms that were not from the illness, but from the meds, right? Side effects.
The side effects. Yes.
And I had a meeting with my team of doctors and I said, listen, I just want your support, but I want to go off all meds. And I'm not saying here that people should do that, right? I'm just sharing my story. This is how what felt good for me, but
yes,
follow what felt good for you, right?
For everyone, please. Yeah, for everyone, please consult with your doctors first. Don't make any changes to
For sure.
Yes.
I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not giving you medical advice. I'm just sharing what happened to me.
Yes.
So I had a meeting with my doctors and I said, I researched all of this. This is feeling really aligned. I am afraid to go all in by myself, but I would like to live off meds and I would like you to supervise me. And they actually said yes, and they were on board. So I was really happy because I thought I could see in their eyes that they were not like, she'll come back, but at least they were supportive. So I stopped all my meds. And what I was doing that they were doing like blood tests and like stool tests and all this kind of stuff just to follow through. And after a few months, we realized that inflammation started going down and down and down and down and down.
Wow.
And like there hasn't been any other symptom for 3 years now. And I haven't taken any meds, any pills, anything. Yes, exactly. Like, and I want like this goes through nervous system and trauma work.
Yeah.
And I'm still shocked, right? When I share the story, I'm like, this part of me that feels like, how did you do it? Well, I did it, right? And
yes, I love it because that's my background. That's my training in medical research. I have a PhD in internal medicine and stuff. But those stories, they sound so magical to people, but it can happen. So it is.
There is a reason behind. It's not just like the universe allowed me to do it. I'm not special. Like.
No,
I feel like it's just really linked.
Yeah, and it sounds magical, but you haven't shared with us yet what the work that you did to get there, because you did a lot of system work and wound healing, and that's usually very ugly. That's the
and
try to avoid.
I do want to make sure that people do not feel like this is like a magic solution or a magic pill and that then everything is perfect. No, neither my life is perfect now, right? Like I'm not here to sell shiny things.
Yes.
It did take a lot of work but it can happen, right? Like I always feel like a lot of diseases that people think are genetic are actually not genetic. And a lot of things are linked to trauma. And when we do the work, there are chances that we can actually either reduce the symptoms or completely heal from them. And I feel that brings a lot of hope, right? Like, and I know this can be difficult to hear because when I was sick, also like some people were telling me certain stories and I didn't want to listen to them because at that point, it wasn't my truth at that point, and that's okay, right? But when I was ready to listen. So,
yes.
Yeah.
So true. You got to be ready. And I think you know when you're ready because certain things, like you said, show up. You know, you certainly see a book on a shelf and you're just drawn to it. But it's that magnet. And I think that's when you know you're ready. And I listen to that intuition. There's something guiding you to some wisdom within you on that journey. But it doesn't have to be a physical illness, even with your emotional things, to be open-minded and to try.
Yeah, I agree. Like I feel no one can convince you. It just happens. It just happens. Yeah.
Wow. Would you like to share a little bit of some tips on the healing work that you did?
Yeah, I can actually say more or less like the steps, like sort of the protocol, because at that point I did it all by myself. I was struggling financially. And I remember struggling to find the help that I needed because like the help that the doctor were providing me was not what I wanted. And the system, like the medical insurance was not covering the sort of the services that maybe I wanted to look for, like more like natural therapies. So at that point, I'm not saying people have to do it by themselves. Like my life would have been so much easier if I had the support that I wanted, right? If I just felt like someone was there with me. Unfortunately, it was just not like that. So I did it by myself. So I remember just sitting down and making a protocol and like listing all the things that I was going to do. But basically everything was just so I created safety within my nervous system, right? So my nervous system would just expand those moments where I felt safe. So it could help heal everything that was there, right? And my focus was first physical illness. So all the rest was healed like sort of consequently, but my focus was like, okay, let's reduce these physical symptoms. So I'm going to say simple things that I did just so I could get better and sort of like create that safety within. I educated myself on nervous system. So I researched polyvagal theory and just sort of understanding like how is my nervous system working and how come is never feeling safe. What am I feeling? Why am I always anxious? Or why am I stuck in moments of depression? Why do I always feel like this tightness within, right? So sort of understanding what is happening within. And I know it can sound stupid, but it does make a huge difference.
Everyone listen, this is so important. The most educated psychologists that they get that wrong because people start therapy and the first thing they do is doing trauma story sharing. It's like, no, this is not where you start. It's the safety first. So I'm so glad you said that. Yeah. So important.
Yeah, for sure. I would not start by going into your trauma.
Yes.
Please do not, especially if no one is supporting you. Like first, it's like, let's work with the physiology, something simple. Right? And for me, this first step was education. So we sort of understand. So we don't jump into the tool. Like sometimes we just want the thing and it makes sense because we want the thing that is going to make us feel good. It's normal, right? We're humans. We want to get out of this pain. However, before those things, we first need to understand. So that was one of the first steps, right? And then simple steps that I took to feel better was making sure that my nutrition was on point. So it doesn't mean restriction. It just meant like listening to my body, that I know it can be difficult, right? And giving my body the nutrients that it needed. Because after trauma and after nervous system dysregulation, the system needs this sort of injection of like life force energy, right? So it can help you, like it's like you're supporting your nervous system to heal. So I made sure that I was eating nourishing foods, like nutrient dense food, just to help my body feel better, right? Because a lot of times when we look at autoimmune, even though it's so related to nutrition, like doctors do not even mention it, because my doctors never mentioned a thing about it. But it is important. So I looked at nutrition. I sort of make sure that my basic needs, so those sort of like survival needs, were met. So I was eating the right foods. I was making sure that I was sleeping as much as I wanted. And I know that's a privilege. But I had to quit my job, right? And I had to make sure that I was going first. And I was sleeping a lot just to make sure that I was getting the rest that my body needed. And then sort of like small practices, but these things came after, right? Like the more I researched, the more I educated myself on nervous system, and I understood how the nervous system can find this safety. So connecting with my environment and connecting within to sort of like, when we experience trauma, the mind and body are disconnected, right? Like there's like this huge thing. And then through somatic work, we can help it again, sort of get it back. So with small exercises, something simple, because I don't want people to feel overwhelmed, but just like noticing things that you can see, right? So noticing the physical contact that your body is doing on the chair, or whatever surface you are at, and just making sure that you are noticing any noises or sounds around you, things like that. So nutrition, sleep, sort of basic needs, and then like somatic work to sort of get myself back in my body instead of going away, because of course it doesn't feel safe.
Yes. And it's interesting when we don't feel safe, it almost feels like we're not living in a body. I always said I had to sense I'm in the back there, I'm not actually fully inside. And when we're not inside, we're not really in tune with the needs either.
Yeah, for sure. And then it does happen a lot, right? Like it's either like we're overthinking, so it sort of feels like the brain is really busy, or we are actually numb and we just go through life and it's like, oh, what was I doing before? Where did I leave my keys? Yes. And those are like small symptoms, like small signs that can tell us that we are actually not in the body. And it makes sense, right? Like this is not to shame or anything. When we experience trauma, it doesn't feel safe to be in the body. So it is easier for us to just disassociate, and then we can slowly start like making those connections so we can go back and help it heal.
Yes. And you said that's so true. And giving ourselves that time, isn't it? Like back then I didn't, but now I know, like you said, if I forget the keys or can't find the keys, that this is a sign that I'm dysregulated right now. And it's like, oh, pause.
Yeah.
The more you practice it, then the more you get to know your body, you can be regulated so quickly. This isn't like a 2-hour process that you have to do to be regulated. It's so quick, isn't it? Once you have the practices and tools that work for you, and it might be different for you than for me and for you guys listening, to be open and curious. And
I love that you mentioned that, because I feel like it can be easy to think that, oh my God, I'm going to need 2 hours every single day, because we can see in social media these huge routines, and there's nothing wrong with them. Like I do them, but they are not necessary, right? Like it can be a small thing, especially at the beginning when we start, and probably the system is so deprived of energy that I understand how difficult it can seem even to just do something. So it's like, what can I do really tiny that I know I can do it, right? Is it like to get a glass of water every single day? Is it to, I don't know, do 2 minutes of meditation? Like everyone says, I know that you have to meditate, but like small things that can help you, right? It doesn't have to be those 2 hours, and it can be different for everyone. Like this is, a lot of people ask me like, but how do you do it? And this is a really process that I sort of like, when I'm working with clients, we have to map together, because everyone is going to work different. Even though the science is there, then we can sort of change it for it to be adapted to what the person needs and what the person likes, right? So it's what you're saying, like it can be different. What works for me might not work for you.
Yes. But you got that framework. The framework is robust. These are the pieces that need to be there. But what color or shape or whatever those pieces are, doesn't matter. That's unique to everyone. But like safe to be there, tools to regulate your nervous system. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Exactly. Like the framework, the foundation is there, and I do feel like there is like a step-by-step process, but within that step-by-step process, there's a lot of flexibility, right? And something that I forgot to mention when I was talking about like making sure that I was meeting my basic needs, survival needs, something really important for me was to create predictability, just so the system had something to rely on, like, oh yes, this is happening, right? Because after trauma, it can feel so chaotic that just giving the nervous system something that it can predict can make a huge change. And this can be so simple as I'm going to have breakfast every day at the same time, right? Or I'm going to go to bed every day at the same time. It doesn't have to be, as I said, like a huge routine or something. No, not necessary, but just something that it's the same every day. Just like we can treat ourselves like if we are children. Like, how would I need the needs of a child, right? They do need those things. They do need shelter. They need food. They need to sleep. And they do need certain structure to feel safe. So the same with us. We are like little children, right?
Yes, to give it that structure. Yes.
Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it totally does. It helps. And I think it is that journey. I think initially in the healing, did you feel like you needed the structure more? But as you got better and healthier and felt more stable and grounded and had more inner peace, the structure didn't become so important anymore. Did you have the same feeling?
I had the same, because I started with a lot of structure, and I feel it was necessary. At that point, it did serve me. So I was doing like the same things in the same order and stuff like that. While now I'm more flexible, just because my nervous system has more of a capacity to adapt to my environment. Well, before it did need something more structured. But yeah, I guess it depends on the person. It depends on the moment of the journey.
Yes. So guys, it depends on the moment of the journey.
Yeah, we're all in different moments, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think this is exactly why it's so challenging for people sometimes. It's like, what do I need to do? Because our journey is actually quite unique for each one of them. And so I love doing those healing stories. I know so many people shared, but none of the stories have been identical. There's been practice. Everyone's working on the safety and nervous system regulation and the body and things like that. There's some similarities, but they're very unique stories.
That's beautiful.
But I really love your story because it's for you. It's not in a way. This is kind of almost the most beautiful reward for doing all this inner work and then having a physical symptom that doctors think that's a chronic disease that you're going to have for the rest of your life. You just got to accept this to kind of, and I really want people to hear that, whether this is fibromyalgia and things like this. I've heard it from so many people, like once they've done the inner work, it just fizzles away and they feel more vibrant and energized again and less pains.
Right. It's great that you're doing these stories just to show that there are different ways, because like most of my family struggled with fibromyalgia, and I hear the speech, and of course I'm not going to say anything, right, because I don't feel it's my place, but I do feel like the words that they receive from the system and from society, like,
yes,
it's sort of like giving up on life, and this part of me that knows like, oh my god, like there are other things that could be done. So it's great that you're sharing this so people can see like, oh, someone else has done it. Just because they told you it has to be chronic, like, no, there is another reality, and definitely like, is everything so linked to childhood, unfortunately, and trauma and things like that, that once we realize, like, it just comes with a lot of power, right? Like, oh, I can do something about it. I don't depend on this person with the white thing anymore, in a hospital, but I am my own healer.
Yes. Like to claim that power back. And I think this is because trauma took that power, that sense of agency away from us. And that's why we're getting so sick too, as part of it. But reclaiming that, isn't it? It's like, no, I'm in charge of this. Yeah,
it's giving me goosebumps, because I feel like when I realized that moment, it came with a lot of fear, just because, oh my God, suddenly I am responsible for my well-being.
Yes.
But at the same time, with a lot of power, which is like, okay, this feels scary because now there's no one else to blame, and it's me. But it means I can do something about it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes it's those strong emotions that we have in those situations. Like you said, that fear was coming up when because of our trauma. I think our ability to stay with the strong emotions is barely existing, or it wasn't for me. It was not there. And so that was part of the healing as well. Did you find you had to learn how to manage or stay with those really strong emotions?
Yes, exactly. Because I've just talked sort of like the physiology part of it, but because I wanted to make sure, and you said it before, which I love, that first came that, right? I didn't try to sit with my emotions. I didn't try to look at my trauma. And if I did, I made a mistake because maybe my system wasn't ready for that. But basically, I was working on building my capacity to stay with those emotions. And it doesn't mean you're just going to have to sit and feel them, because it can feel extremely overwhelming for the system, and it can send you actually further into dysregulation just because it feels too unsafe. But it's like, how can I build on working that capacity? That's why I pinpoint like the physiology part of it. So building that safety, because these things then can come more naturally. Right? Because before, when I was talking about my story about struggling with anxiety, toxic relationships, not being able to set boundaries, and not being able to show up authentically because I didn't even know who I was and all these things. Yeah. Then naturally, after doing this nervous system work, my body had the capacity to do more of these things. So what does it mean? It means then I have the capacity to set boundaries and say no. Because saying no was something that was not in my vocabulary. Like, there was this such big people-pleasing part in me. It's still there. So again, I'm not saying like, oh, everything is perfect. No, it's not. It's just like I have an awareness and I have more control over it, right? But there was no in my vocabulary, but then suddenly I am able to say no and to express my needs and to ask for what I want.
Yes.
And while before I felt like I was always like on a roller coaster of emotions, like my life felt chaotic, right? Like, I don't like to use the word drama, which just so many people understand. Like, it just felt really dramatic, and I struggled with it. And then life feels steady now. It doesn't mean I don't feel emotions. I do feel them. It doesn't mean everything is good all the time. Not at all. I just have the capacity to go through that discomfort. But there's more of a steady line, right? It's not up and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs. It's more like there is this sense of ease, like in the background, and then things come up. Definitely they do. There's this inner knowing that I can handle it because I can, right? But not can handle it that I have to push through, like I have to push through my whole life. It's not that, because it's different. It's more that I can hold space for this. And no, I don't have to push through.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you shared that. I do have one more question. So, because
for sure.
The way you went about your journey, I'm curious, how important did you feel was actually sharing your trauma story, like talking to a therapist in detail about the traumas that happened? How much time did you spend on that?
None.
Thank you.
This is so important. I love that you asked that, because I feel like when the system is not ready, the more you talk about it, the worse it gets. And this is like for people out there that I know a lot of people have been in talk therapy for years and they still feel like I'm not getting better. And then there's this sense of there's something wrong with me. I might be broken. I have all of this support and I'm still the same. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just the method is not adequate. I did not have to talk about my trauma.
No. Oh, beautiful. I'm so, I got that impression, but I wanted to be very clear with that, because I got so many, especially for some reason, people who do EMDR, just that process, people feel like, oh, I've got so much trauma, there were so many different events all my life. I've been doing this for years now, but we're still not sure. And it's like, I've never talked to any of my events from start to finish, none of them. And my life, like I have so much peace and harmony, and yes, like you said, it's to describe what my life's like now.
Oh, and I've done EMDR,
Yeah.
but like that's different. When I done it, it was like last year. I was in a moment in my healing journey when I wasn't sick. I was like in the best moment, like now, right? And I did want someone to hear me, just because unfortunately I didn't have like a strong friendship support system. So I just wanted someone that I could talk to, and it felt safe because I didn't have anyone in my life that felt safe enough. So I did talk about it, but it had nothing to do with my healing. Like all the healing came before, right? And I was still going to those sessions with my therapist because it felt nice, because it felt like a friend. That's all. But then I was doing all the work. Like EMDR can be great, but just know, like, you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to go back. Like, there's no need. No.
Yes. Beautiful. That's right. That I think it's so important for people to realize, and it's not talked about enough. I often feel that people, or it's in what I find, that it's so many people. This is the focus from the get-go in therapy. The first session, even the intake, is all about giving examples of the trauma and what kind of trauma. So that's not what it's. That's like, I think I read something, you did some posts on Facebook where you said that things like that can keep you stuck, right? So there'll be a link down below in the description, so you can find Melody on Facebook, and I think you're on Instagram and places. But you have beautiful posts in helping people and talk about. We got a mini masterclass here on the steps. So that was beautiful. But if you want to learn more from Melody and how she did her healing or go in depth, then there'll be links down below too, so you can contact.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
But and if you follow her on Facebook, you get to read the posts.
I try to offer as much free content as possible for people. So I definitely share a lot on my Instagram and on my Facebook.
On Instagram, yes, that's beautiful. So I think, was there anything that's still missing that you would like to share? Or do you feel like complete?
No, I feel like we covered a lot. It was just really interesting, that last question, because like my mom is stuck in that moment. Like she's been mentally and physically ill for years. But when I got sick, she sadly couldn't walk. And they couldn't find anything. Like, it was not the brain, it was not the spine, it wasn't anything. So then they realized that just the system was like, I can't do it anymore, right? And she suddenly, like, she was a functional human being doing karate, doing all the things, and then suddenly she can't move or feel her legs. And now she can walk more, so it's great. But I can see when she goes to her doctors, because she has to have like regular visits, she ends up coming home shaking. Like, she stays like 1 week maybe in bed, because those sessions are so re-traumatizing. Because again, it's going back and going back and going back, and we have to talk about it, and you have to move on, Nils. You have to move on. It's like, the system is so broken.
Yes.
And when I see her and I see her so stuck and being so afraid to go to the psychologist, I'm like, but those people are the ones supposed to be helping you. Yes. How is that possible?
Yeah. Oh, it makes me so sad when I hear all this, and it's sadly so common. It's almost I shouldn't say, but if sometimes it feels like that the majority of people has that kind of experience at some point on the healing journey.
Yeah.
And yes, and it's sad to watch when it's people who you love and care about. It's like you want to do something, but we can't. It's got to be something that comes from within you, isn't it? You know when it's right for you to make those decisions, or what feels right and what to pick. Yes. Yes.
Oh, that was great. It was a great chat.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that with your wisdom with us. It was a beautiful share, and I'm just super inspired.
Thank you so much for listening.
Inspired a lot of people here too. So thank you everyone so much for being here, and the links are down below, so you can find out a little bit more about Melody and connect with you. So thank you guys. See ya. Bye.